Welcome back to the Royals Review Pod. I'm your host, as ever, Dan Worth. I'm joined by my good friend, Jim. Jim, it's Friday. You feeling happy and ready for the weekend?
Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait for it. It's been a very long week, football-wise. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's been a very long week football-wise. The nights have started to get dark when you finish work. Everything's getting a bit dreary. Coming off the back of that wonderful week last week, to be slapped 4-1 by Stockport away from home in midweek, it does feel like the kind of positivity rug has been pulled from underneath us, and we're back to struggling away from home. And well, you can probably tell by my tone, not quite as excited as I maybe was this time last week. Let's have a quick chat about Stockport then. I don't know how much there is to say, to be honest, because from my point of view, there is nobody who really deserves much plaudit, and there isn't really anyone that deserves the finger pointed at them. I feel like the performance was generally just poor all round. What did you make of it, Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I know we mentioned on the last pod that we were a bit sort of, we didn't want to underestimate Stockport, but I think we were smashed all over the pitch from kickoff, really. Never really sort of showed any improvement. I guess after the goal, we were relatively quick at finding an equaliser, but besides that, that 40 seconds to maybe a minute of decent play, we were pretty poor.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I know this is a slightly different point to what we were talking about previously, but it may have even been on the last episode. I was talking about how Reading now seem to be becoming more resolute at the back, and even when we're coming under a lot of pressure late on in games, we are able to sort of hold on. So it's really disappointing to see us claw back from going one behind to only then just concede, as you say, like 40 seconds later. Is really disappointing, particularly away from home, because you're thinking, right, you're back in the game now. Let's try and tone it down a little bit. We don't need to do anything crazy. Stay in the game, and then before you've even blinked, we're back to a goal down, which is very frustrating. One key thing that stood out, we've talked about it all season. We'll probably talk about it on every episode going forward for the rest of the season. Is it's very clear to me that there is a lot of need for rotation, because I thought quite a lot of the players were looking a little bit dead on their feet. As I said, I don't want to point the finger at anyone because everyone is obviously doing their best, but with a thin squad, the sheer amount of games and minutes that players are having to put in is such a big ask. But the likes of Lewis Wing, I thought he looked off it, really. The defence was getting beaten pretty frequently. We didn't really look like we had much of an outlet. I guess we need to talk about the front three, but we'll talk about that later. This weekend, though, let's jump to that. I think real big need for rotation with the FA Cup based on what we saw against Stockport.
Definitely, yeah. If anything, I'm surprised that the rotation wasn't saved for these cup games, given that we've got what's going to be 2 in a row now. I agree with what you're saying about the players need to be rotated, but I just think the opportunity for that rotation is in these cup games, as you would expect, right?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, one rotation that was forced and wasn't down to fitness was Jaden Wareham coming in for Sam Smith. Now, we spoke loads about Sam Smith. We've actually smoked quite a lot about Jaden Wareham. And I'm certainly not suggesting that it's Wareham's fault. I thought he did okay. Not, as I said, he didn't pull up any trees, but certainly didn't make too many mistakes. But the point I wanted to make, or the question I wanted to ask, should I say, is the front three of Akandi, Wareham, and Campbell was a little bit of a surprise to me. And I'm also not sure that was the right front three to play here. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it was quite obvious that it didn't really scream goals. I couldn't really see where the goals were going to come from with the top three, with the front three. And And I think more to the point though, they didn't play to the strengths of those players. I don't think playing long balls to Akandi, playing long balls to Campbell, who was being marked by someone that was almost twice his height, twice the size of him, was the right thing to do. And that showed because he didn't win anything. He was bullied for the whole first half, sorry. I know he scored, but I think that sort of, that doesn't prove the point wrong. And yeah, you could see since Kelvin was introduced in the second half, there was an outlet, there was something to aim towards up top, and he got on the end of a load of balls. So I just think the whole setup was an issue. There just wasn't really anyone to aim at.
Yeah, I think the style of play was very questionable. You mentioned the goal, which was very nice, but I wanted to look, and I'll talk about this shortly, but statistically, so poor across the board. But Campbell specifically, no dribbles, no successful dribbles. He won one aerial duel out of 5. No tackles. It's all quite poor. No key passes. He only made 8 accurate passes in the whole game. As I said, I'm not saying these stats to say Campbell was rubbish. I'm just saying that, one, he wasn't fantastic, and 2, that maybe the style of play we were looking at was not the right one.
I mean, look at the. Sorry, just to jump in on that point. How was the goal created, and when was our best passage of play? It was when we were playing with the ball at our feet, along the ground, quick passing. All things that we've seen the team do pretty much week in, week out, and excel at. So I just can't get my head around why they didn't choose to play like that more frequently during this match. And then, obviously with the issues in defence, that was all reflected in the scoreline come full time. But sorry, go on, jump back to finishing your point.
No, I mean, the point I was just going to move completely on and talk about the stats in general, because they make for very, very bleak reading. Reading had 2 shots on 2 shots total, only 1 on target was the goal, which standalone is terrible, but we also faced 16 shots. So that just goes to show the kind of discrepancy between Stockport and Reading on the day. Key passes, which is basically, well, as it says, you probably don't need me to explain, but it's passes that create a big chance. 1 for Reading, which was, again, obviously the goal. But Stockport had 13 big chances, which, does sort of suggest that only scoring 4 goals was relatively okay from us. We got completely bullied in the air. What's the percentage? We won 38% of aerial duels, which, is not good enough. And our best player in the air was Harvey Nibbs, which was a slight surprise to me. Dribbles, we struggled with the ball. We dribbled past 12 times. All of the midfield getting beaten way too easily, and we only completed 5. So as you say, the passing is where it feels like we need to. What am I trying to say? We need to do more of it. The quick passing is where Reading, I think, looked the most threatening and can cause the most issues. So I think maybe in the training ground this week, they're going to revert a little bit more back to that. Again, I don't know if it's because they're playing away, because we do tend to see that at home, right? Like the quick passing, keeping the ball a little bit. But it just seemed really disjointed and pretty horrible to watch against Stockport. I can't think if there was anything else I wanted to say on the game. Like, as I said, probably not really worth spending too much time on, because it was pretty gross. But as we've said time and time again, 1, this is League One. It's not always going to be pretty football. 2, with everything going on, we have to accept that we're not going to win every game. 3, our away form, besides the last win, is poor. Like we shouldn't necessarily be going to Stockport and expecting to win. So quite a few factors really. But let's move on, unless you've got anything else to add.
No, I think, it's just the disappointing aspect to it is just the performance. I know in the previous 2 games before, which we did come away with wins at home. One was away at Exeter, one was at home. There were still poor performances in the second halves. And yeah, it was just a shame that this was just a poor performance for the whole 90 minutes. And another loss on the road, and a big loss as well.
Yeah, I think that's also a point, isn't it? It's not just a slight defeat. I think Reading will come away with that thinking we got absolutely battered there and we were miles off it, which is not great for confidence, particularly with a young squad. But then again, that's their job now to bounce back from it. And the games come quick and fast. As you mentioned, though, we do have not 2 FA Cup games. We have an FA Cup game on Saturday and then a Bristol Street Motors Trophy game next week. I think it's Tuesday, which I personally hope there's a lot of rotation to give some of the more senior players a rest. But I also imagine that will be the case anyway. But the next point I wanted to make is a little bit of fun that we've had over the last week talking about Sam Smith. Well, I say fun. I still genuinely believe that no one has put forward a case to prove that I'm wrong, that Sam Smith is the best striker Reading have had in the last 10 years, particularly when I already mentioned the 2 names that people are throwing at me, telling me that I'm an idiot. I don't disagree that I'm an idiot, and I'm sure you don't disagree with that either, but I would have liked to have seen some proper rebuttal from people to tell me why I'm wrong, rather than just name calling. But there we go. Any retweets?
Mate, it's X. What do you expect? What do you expect?
Mate, any engagements, whether they're horrible or lovely, they're all engagements. So I'm pretty happy. But I wanted to put it on to you now then, because I've taken all the heat this week.
Yeah, it's just I don't want to sound like I can't answer it, but I guess it's just an almost impossible question to answer, because it depends what you define as like the best. Is it best in terms of just their end products, or is there a bigger picture? And for me, I think there is a bigger picture. So I saw comments saying Pogrevniak, and I think Pogrevniak, if we're talking about the last 10 years, he must have been in the last year of his contract at Reading, and I don't remember him scoring many goals compared to some of the other strikers that we've had in the last 10 years in that final year. So I'm going to discount him. We all know Pog, obviously, a fantastic striker on his day for us, but I don't think he falls into the criteria for this conversation. I saw Orlando Sarr, who I think, again, he looked all right, but, he played 20 times for us, I think, and he scored 5 goals, and 3 of those were in one match. I think he's got to be one of the most overrated strikers that we've had. It looked like he could have been a fantastic striker, but ultimately he left, and we can't know that for certain. Then the striker who is at the top of my list, and I'm sure he's at the top of a lot of other people's lists as well. There are definitely a few comments. Yann Kermorgant, what a baller! Like, I think he is a similar sort of player to Smith in terms of what he actually does for the team. I know we were speaking about this earlier in the week, and the fact that 1, he didn't cost anything, I believe. I think he was a free transfer. 2, I doubt he was on massive wages. 3, he would help out defensively and win a lot defensively, and then 30 seconds later, he'd be getting his head on a cross up the other end of the pitch. 4, final year of his contract, and what was it? I think he said he was going to leave and then didn't, or
he was going to retire, right? And then
he was going to retire and he didn't. He stayed another season. He was a big game player. In that playoff season, he scored some pretty important goals against some pretty strong teams. 2 of them being penalties. One against Leeds after chatting shit about how he was going to smack them all week, and then he did. And then the one against Fulham, right? In the second leg? Or was it in the first leg?
It was the one back at home, right? Yeah, I think it was the second leg.
Either way, 2 massive goals that season. So And he was also just an entertaining player. Like, he pulled stuff out of the bag that like you just wouldn't really expect from a player of his build and his age. So for me, Kermorgant is top of that list. But I would put Smith second because I think he falls into the criteria of a lot of things that Kerm falls into as well. Again, didn't cost anything. Doubt he's on massive wages. Such an important player for the team. Does so much more than just score goals. Loves the club, you know. Bit of a full circle moment for him returning. And the reason why I've gone for Smith instead of Joao, who I would have down as third, is because of those reasons. Obviously, Joao's end product was great. He scored a lot of goals for us. He scored the most goals in the last 10 years, I imagine. But at the same time, he was lazy, like frustratingly lazy. He cost a load of money, which ultimately led to financial issues or added to the financial issues of our club, which is why we've ended up where we are now. He would have been one of the highest earners. I think if we got promoted that season where we reached the playoffs, where we almost reached the playoffs under Paunovic, he would have cost us even more money. Obviously, the injuries. There's just so many negative things about Joao, but you know he scored goals, so that is what you want from your striker at the end of the day. But that's why I've got him in third. I think, for me, there's just more to take in when you're deciding if someone is the best of the last 10 years. So first Kermorgant, second Smith, and third Lucas Joao.
Yeah, I think, as you say, you made the compelling argument that I was looking for other people to make on X, so I can completely appreciate what you're saying. I guess it does come down to, as you say, the best and favourite. Like, they can be two different things. For me, Kerm is my favourite. Like, definitely, he's given me the most enjoyment of any of those strikers. But I think Sam Smith's numbers, i.e. his 0.38 goals per game total, stands out for me. He also does all of the stuff off the ball. I'm just repeating what I said last week, basically. So I think almost objectively, Sam Smith is better because of the numbers. But yes, people who are very eagle-eyed and pointed out that we are currently in League One are also correct. And yes, by default, the opposition we come up against maybe slightly worse than the likes that Kermorgant and Joao were coming up against. But also to add, Joao didn't travel on the last day, did he, when we got relegated away? So that
there you go.
He leaves with poor taste, man. I loved what he did with the ball at his feet, but you're right, he was so lazy.
Just on the whole league thing, like, I know it's a good point. Obviously, they're doing it at a higher level, but also the team that Joao had behind him is a much stronger team than the team that Smith has behind him. So I guess that sort of does bring it down to a more comparable level. And then the argument that, you know, if you put Joao in League One, would he perform as well? Would he score as many? I don't know. The question is, I don't know, because I don't think it's yes for sure, because we've seen Premier League players come down to Reading who've been shit, like by far the worst players that we've had. We've seen players that have signed for Reading who have been consistently good performers in the Championship and have just done nowhere near as good. Matej Vidra, for example, you know, quality for Watford, signed for Reading. You know, a few decent performances, but you know, was that his fault? No, it may have just been how the team was set up at the time. But I think the comparison between the leagues is a lot less. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to get across here, but I just think, you know, although Joao did it at a high level, I think he was aided by a lot else that was around him at the time. I just think Smith doing what he's doing with everything that's going on, Not that I feel like that's just a running excuse for everything nowadays, but it's something that as a player, it's gonna be on your mind, right? At some point, I'm sure he's thought, am I even going to get paid this month? So, yeah, it's all things to consider, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's not. I don't think it's as simple as Championship. Oh, you come up against good teams. League One, you come up against bad teams. There are so many other variables, etc., as you mentioned. So, anyway, very interesting topic. I'm glad we covered it. I'm sure we'll probably touch upon it going forward. But before we go for today, then, one question came in. In your opinion, how do you think Reading should set up away from home? I know we have a way of playing, but I think we need to be more resilient and less open away from home. Well, I'll start by saying absolutely. I'd love to see us concede fewer goals away from home, and just in general. But this is a really tough one because yes, we have been poor away from home and the results are not good. But Ruben Selles, or Sayes, as the commentator was calling him the other day, hilarious, obviously has a style of play that he is trying to create at Reading, and that is high-intensity press, quick passing, and free-flowing football when possible, which, okay, when you go on the road and we lose 4-1, seems like a big mistake, and maybe we should have set up with more defensively, with 5 at the back, or something like that. But it's so tough because, well, for one, Sellers knows infinitely more than I do about how to set up in football matches and tactics and gameplay, etc. But I also think, just from the way that I look at it, I think it's great that Reading are trying to build an identity and a style of play. And as I've said a million times, it's not always going to pay off with the squad we have, with everything going on away from home, being in League One. Like, there's so many things, and I think I actually saw a tweet from Sim. I forgot his second name, but the guy from Tyler End, and it was like, I think sometimes we need to not be so high when we win and so low when we lose, because we're gonna win games, we're gonna lose games. It's League One football. It's Reading Football Club. Like, we're not teams that are gonna just. We're not a team that's just going to win every game or lose every game. We'll probably be somewhere nicely in the middle. And I think maybe the expectation should shift a little bit more to be happy with that and enjoy the wins, but don't go sky high, and don't enjoy the defeats, but don't be too low, because it's all okay. You've probably got a better answer to this than me, Jim. So take it away.
It's similar, I guess, to what you just mentioned. And on that point, yeah, I know we shouldn't be too low, but I do understand that people are frustrated that it's another loss. It's a poor performance, one that we probably saw coming, and we got battered away from home. So and it's in the spotlight, our poor away performances. So it's something that does need to change. But in terms of like how that gets changed, yeah, I'm not gonna comment because, well, I'll say what I think, but I don't know. I don't know better than Ruben. So ultimately, it's down with him. But I think what sort of leads into it is obviously confidence, which is something that he can change. The formation and the tactics, like we mentioned. Yeah, the formation may have been correct. Obviously, it's what we've been playing for the whole season, and we've seen. For what we've been playing for this whole season, and we've seen how well and how much of an impact it can have against other teams, especially at home. But the tactics were all wrong with the changes that we made. So there's the first point. I think if the tactics were slightly different and we did play along the floor, we scored a good goal. If we did that 4 times, then we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But we've seen them play better than what they played, than how they played against Stockport, and still lose. So maybe it is down to formation, and maybe they should sort of change things up and play 5 at the back, and absorb a bit more pressure, and then try and play out with a counter attack. And I think we've got the players for that. Akandi is rapid, Kelvin is rapid, Smith is quick, Wareham is quick. Savage is pretty fast as well. So we could, we definitely got the players to play a different formation. But I think the main thing is, although it's taken a while, I think Sellés is the kind of manager that obviously knows that there's this issue and will be trying something about it. When we saw him play 4-2-2-2 when he first joined and sort of implement the high press that we see throughout the system that we play now, it didn't work, did it, for the first few months? And he switched it up to the formation that we play now. So, it's nice that we actually have a manager who identifies that there is an issue or is aware that there is an issue and does something about it rather than just hoping that it will change at some point. So, although we haven't seen that change yet, I do think it's obviously something that they're fully aware of and are likely working on. So, I'm sure, it will change at some point. But yeah, it would be nice to see some sort of change when we're playing away from home.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just tough, isn't it? Like, it's so tough. And as you say, with exposure on the fact that the results haven't been good enough away from home, it almost just becomes a thing. And then confidence gets lower and the chances of winning become less likely and things like that. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. We've said for a long while now that if we can keep winning at home and pick up a few points here and there on the road, we'll probably be there or thereabouts. So it's no bad thing. Right, Jim, that'll do for today. FA Cup this week. So we'll probably skip a review unless we win 8-0, which something tells me we might not. So I'll have to see you in a week or so. Thanks, everyone, for listening. As always, please like, follow, and subscribe. Get our podcasts in the right ears and eyes. Enjoy the weekend's football, and we'll see you next week. Come on, you are!